Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
We're back out here at Giga Texas. It's Friday the 28th of July, and I had an interesting start of the day. At about 5 o'clock in the morning, I got a notification that employees here were being evacuated from the east side because of what may have been an active shooter. Now, later on, it was identified as an active attacker, and as you can see by this screen, this is the initial report, and I wasn't sure whether or not I should come up here or not, or what the situation was going to be. Fortunately and thankfully, about 40 minutes later, a new report came out that it was a false report and there was no active shooter or active attacker at all, and employees were able to come back into the facility. So I'm just very glad that it turned out to be a false report and nobody was hurt. But it was a very scary time in the morning when I was on my way up here at about 5:15 or so in this morning. So anyway, if you hear about that, that's kind of the situation that took place. Now, another completely different thing that I saw inadvertently on my previous video, as you can see by this short clip, is as I was finishing up my last video over on the east side, I actually caught a picture of the Cybertruck leaving the testing and calibration lot and then heading north along that parallel road to that roundabout intersection. I looked for it today. I couldn't see another Cybertruck, but you never know. If you see it in my video, let me know, because sometimes it's hard to see in the screen when I'm flying the drone. Now, two things for today. On the south end, almost all of the windows now on that southwest and south side have been removed, and it looks like the third level still has some of the glass remaining, as you can see, and there's these rack mounts on the ground that when they remove the windows, they'll store them until the extension is completed. Also, as you can tell by this image, the CFA Pile drilling rigs have continued their operation, and they've moved to a different location, and there's rebar nearby for those piles, so progress is being made. And then the last place for the intro I'll talk about today is I'll zoom up to the east side of the battery cathode plant, where we see continued work with those structures, concrete walls, some extensions now to kind of the roadways, almost joining the north and the south two structures. And the biggest change today is that they're putting that semicircular steel roof section that we talked about in my previous video. They're now installing them on the walls, starting from that north end of the walls and then working their way to the south. Now, judging by the amount of materials that are nearby, this is going to only extend maybe about 20 meters or so, unless they get more material. So very interesting development, and you'll see a lot more in the video. So with that being said, plenty more to see. I did give you a good view across a lot of the site today. So let's get into the drone. Let's take a look and talk our way through the drone. As always, thank you very much for your support. And I'm glad that there was a false report today and everybody is okay here at Giga Texas. I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.
A special thank you to all of my outstanding Patreons for your continued encouragement and support. Patreon members get access to hundreds of high-resolution photos, previews of the future material, and direct dialogue with me. If you would like to support my channel, please consider becoming a patron using this link, which is also in the video description. Please also consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, as this helps as well. Thank you. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Well, after an eventful morning here at Giga Texas, we'll start off on the west side of the highway and take a look at the clearing and the grade work that is going on here in the West Support Facility. You can tell that they are continuing to work on this section at the bottom and left-hand side of the screen, and they want to get the grade level across this entire section, and eventually this will most likely be the new car staging and transportation lot once it is completed. And this will help free up the east side parking lot where it is currently located. Now, we just flew over where the telephone poles and the electrical wires were removed earlier in the week. And as we continue to progress to the southwest, it's a good view of the roadwork in the middle. On the left-hand side, you can see all of the old debris of the concrete has now been removed, and we just have this dirt pile and a lot of materials being stored on that material staging yard. The triangular section in the upper right is where the contractor parking takes place. And as I pan the drone around the south to the east, you can see these earthwork equipment are kind of moving along this section next to the road. It looks like there's some more earthwork that is being done. And as I turn the drone back, you'll get a chance to see it a little better without all of the sun glare. But there you can see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen that earthworking equipment and the changes. So let's resume the flight on this side of the highway, and we'll take a look at how the south end looks today. What we will see as we get closer in is the windows on the left-hand side on that south side of the building and southwest have almost all been removed, and they're preparing to start removing the wall panels. And again, we'll talk about that when we get closer in. The CFA auger pier drilling machines are active on the left-hand side of the screen. And then here coming into the center, we can see the intersection with the concrete. It looks like another section has been poured. There's just this one square section in the middle that still needs to get the rebar installed so they can finish out this particular intersection. Now, part of the road is going to the north with the medians, and that'll join up with the existing road and parallel the entire side of the factory, and then the other side will proceed over to the east. There is some trenching going on for some more large plumbing on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, and on the wall we can see crews are putting plastic on the windows. I think they're going to do the white staining starting from this point of the building and then working to the north now. At least that's what it appears right now. As we fly further to the east, I'll give you a good view of the land clearing that is going on. It looks like most of the grade next to that pond is completed to this point in time. And then this larger section, we can see that they have expanded it by removing more of the trees, and they're starting to fill in the section right at the tree line with more dirt. They're going to try to raise this entire grade, and this is most likely where that multi-level parking garage will be built on this section of the site. So let's proceed back towards the building, and we'll resume taking a look at the work in detail on the south end. Here's a good view looking down at that trench where the plumbing is being done. There's a trench box in place, and that's to help with the workers to prevent any of the trench walls collapsing while they're doing the work. As we finish going over the power lines, I'll start bringing the drone down. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that rebar, some of the footing rebar cages, and some of the molds in those kind of rectangular or kind of square black items on the left. We can also see here more of the rebar cylindrical cages have been made, and the CFA drills are working on a different section of this south end. So they're continuing to prepare the piles for the footings, and the footings will be supporting the steel columns. Speaking of which, we see more of the steel columns have been erected here, and the crews are doing more steel assembly. This large doubled column in the middle, that's to support the bridge crane rails, and that shows that the bridge cranes that are inside will extend out at least to this point, and then more of the steel columns have been installed along this open section right now. As we look at the rest of the existing wall, we can see all of the windows have now been removed, and I would expect to see these wall panels removed soon. On the ground here, we see more materials being collected and crews working on some of the older steel items, probably preparing them for recycling. As I look back at the main building, a few things that I want to draw your attention to. In addition to the windows being removed and placed on those rack mounts on the ground, we also see what looks to be a temporary wall just inside the windows. I think this is to provide protection while the walls are removed for the extension. We also can see the hole here on the second to the first floor and also on the third floor and how that looks right now. And then all of the lighting fixtures on the walls have been removed as well. Again, here's some more of the windows on those kind of mounts or racks, and this will be what is used to put them over to material staging and save them until they're needed once the extension is completed. There's a lot of vehicles, trucks coming in with deliveries today. There's 2 of them we just saw. Those are the blue accordion kind of trailers. We'll see those again a little later. There's a lot of deliveries all over the site today. The underground well here looks like there's some rectangular concrete vaults that have been moved here. It's a very interesting change and something I'll just monitor to see what they're going to be doing with that. As I get in a little bit closer to the wall again, you can see those rack mounts where the windows are going to be stored and transported, and how the rest of this side of the building looks. There's still windows, plenty of them, that need to be removed before they can start removing the wall panels. But as I mentioned earlier, there's work going on just inside to kind of seal off this section to allow those wall panels to be removed. There's a lot of materials that have been delivered here, already moved up into that loading platform. There's these 2 very large ones. I'll try to pivot the drone around and take advantage of the shadow of the building so you can see what they look like. They have the wrappings on, so it's really hard to tell, but one of these items, and as I zoom in you'll get a chance to see, is white and red, and it looks like it's a large piece of equipment by itself, and the other one that's under the silver wrapping may be very similar. Not sure exactly what it is, but it is interesting to see the size. You can compare them to the trucks nearby for scale. As I turn the drone back towards the north, I'm going to show you the current status of the material staging on this side of the road. Again, it looks like a lot of the excess materials have been moved away, cleaned up. There's some new items in that blue wrapping that have just recently arrived. But overall, this is kind of a dwindling material storage location as far as size. Landscaping work here and the planting of that large tree looks to be completed, and the Cyber truck graffiti trailer has been removed as well. On this side of the road, here's some more of the materials that are being used to continue to assemble and build out general assembly lines 2 and 3 just inside this section. And then the crews continue to work on installing the stainless steel cladding on these beams and columns. And it looks like at this point in time they've got to a holding point. Hopefully we'll see more of the steel cladding arrive and then they can continue the work. Also, as we continue further to the north, we'll see the end of line is extremely busy today. There's almost more than a dozen or so Model Ys, and you can tell what the free color is now that the Tesla's moved to the gray, since they are all the gray. And then we can peek inside that open door with the ramp, and you can see those lights. That's part of the end of line final checkouts before they come outside here. But great to see the amount of activity with production of Model Ys here today. We'll proceed to the north along the west side of the building. There's a lot of big deliveries that are happening up here. The ones that we're approaching first is in the north part of General Assembly Line 1, and this is where the production of the Model Ys inside here is ongoing. Now, this is also very close to the 4680 production cell section of the building, and we know that there's been some construction going on inside, so I don't know, maybe this is related to that as well, and it's just all going inside this ramp and open door. But a lot of materials on this side of that ramp. On this side, next to the receiving doors, we see these 2 accordion trucks. These are the ones that we saw arriving a little earlier in the video. Looks like some very large robotic assemblers have been delivered or being delivered here. There's a yellow one on the right. There's a red one on the middle of the left. It looks like some crates as well. And this gives you a good idea of just the activity here with these deliveries. And again, all of this is going into the 4680 battery cell production portion of the building. And we've seen a lot of other very large equipment delivered to this section of the building very recently and moved inside. And this looks like it's just continuing that build out, most likely increasing the production capability for the 4680s. And then here you can see that crate being dropped off and some more materials on the ground. We also see these interesting and very brightly covered yellow items that have been delivered within the last 48 hours. It's really hard to tell exactly what these are. The markings don't really help identify them from what I can see here right now. But again, all of this, I believe, is related to increasing production of the 4680 battery cell section of the building. All of these steel items, the beams and columns on the ground, are being moved inside this portion of the building where they're doing a lot of construction inside. I think this is also related to those material deliveries that we were talking about just a little earlier. We also see these trailers that are normally used to contain contaminated water that's taken off site for treatment. We also see more materials near the north end of the paint shop next to the loading platforms and those trailers for the contractor offices. As I mentioned, on the south side of the stamping, they're starting to do the white staining, so I think they've stopped doing the staining on this part of the building for right now. The conduit work on the left-hand side and more of the assembly of the furnaces and other items inside the casting machine structure continues at a pretty good pace. As I turn around and give you a good view of this northeast corner of the factory, we'll come over to this parking lot where we see some interesting developments. You can see these black racks in the foreground. These are for castings, but they look larger and different than the white ones that are used for Model Ys. So maybe those are for the Cybertruck. We also see these vaults opened up where they're doing electrical conduit and wiring, and these orange items are where the large rolls of wires are placed, and then they can roll them out and put them into the conduit. So great to see that here. We'll be looking for wires being installed, coming all the way up under the ground up to the Megapack and the electrical switchyard location. Looks like more deliveries here, some steel items, possibly beams or columns, and then some other items into this kind of black wrapping on this truck. So again, a lot of deliveries today all over the site. As we approach the Megapacks, we see all 68 Megapacks, the 34 transformers, and you can see kind of that whiter, silvery kind of items on the right and left-hand side. I've been told by an electrician that what those are is they roll out a lot of the wires in there, they let them heat up from the sun, and it makes them more pliable, and it's easier to do the wiring. Also, speaking of wiring, you can see all of these red and yellow and orange wires and how they are being installed right now on the Megapacks and how they will connect over to the transformers. I hope that these close-in views give you a really good idea of how this is progressing right now. So a lot of work to get the electrical wiring completed, and then of course here on the north end, this steel structure for a lot of the electronic and electric components, whether they be circuit breakers, insulators, just general connections, the cable trays, also the large concrete foundation. I think that it still needs some work to put in kind of a moat foundation around it for a large transformer. And of course, the Trenching with the electrical conduit to connect this site over to the south end of the electrical switchyard is continuing as well. And as I pull away, this gives you a good view of how this section looks today, where most of the activity on the Megapack site is right now, and how the rest of it looks in relation to where the Gigafactory is in the background. We're sitting to the south along the electrical switchyard. I want to show you the developments on the south end where the underground vault construction continues. What we see here next to the crane is some of the trench has been backfilled in with dirt. Also, the top of the vault has that rectangular opening. You can actually see down inside. There's another smaller opening as well. And then crews are starting to install the formwork to frame out the roof section for the rest of this east area. Most of the concrete walls have been poured. It looks like crews are working on some of those right now to remove the remaining forms, and then they'll be working on the top. This is a good view of also the backfilled in sections with the dirt. I'll bring the drone closer in for some more detailed views here. You also see that temporary wall with the steel beams, and those wall panels are starting to be removed as well, and eventually those will be completely gone once the construction is completed. And here's a good view of the temporary electrical switchyard, the new permanent one on the right, and also the Megapack site on the top right. So let's fly back over towards the main building and let's look at some of the details that are going on this part of the site. We'll start here. I'll bring the drone down. I'm going to show you this trench work. This is where that black HDPE pipe has been installed. Looks like they're filling in most of the trenches. There's that one section remaining. Take a look at the workers. This gives you a good sense of scale for just how deep these trenches are. So let's cross back over Tesla Road, take a look at the east side of the casting machine structure. As I zoom in, this gives you a good, almost ground level view look of how the east side appears today. A lot of the equipment work on the conduit on this widened section, castings, and then this concrete area that's been cross-cut. This covers over where the electrical conduit has proceeded to the wall of the factory. In this section, we see those two new receiving doors. This area will have more concrete poured once the plumbing is completed. Also, just the number of castings on this side as well. And of course, the portable or mobile supercharger still in front of that secondary east entrance. More deliveries on the road. A lot of activity here on the superchargers, and of course the new car testing and calibration lot. I've had a lot of people ask, why are all these cars dusty and dirty? Why don't they move? Not really sure, but I think some are waiting for parts. Some of them may be testing, and some of them for other purposes. As we fly up over the trees, I wanted to give you just a slightly different view of the clearing on the left and how is it expanding in preparation for that multi-level parking garage construction that is now underway. And then on this side of the trees, this is the recycling dock area. We see that they not only recycle some of the wooden pallets and boxes and crates, but also some of the bodies for the Model Ys. And we've also seen some structural packs being broken down for recycling here as well. This is a good view of the east side, the east warehouse on wheels on the left. It looks like it's shrinking to some degree, mostly to the west side. And it also looks to me like we may be seeing cleanup here, removal of equipment. Here's a container that's being removed. And I'm not sure yet, but it looks like we may be seeing this whole area cleaned out so that we can see either new construction or for use of this area for a different purpose. But that'll be something I'll watch, and it's kind of speculation on my part right now. As we fly up over what used to be the material staging and is now the overflow lot for employees, we see that near the TKS paint system items, some of which look like they're loaded up on trucks to be moved inside now, there's also a lot of very interesting deliveries going on here. Some blue-topped crates here, some large items coming in on these two white trucks on the left. And also these 4 large crates with the white tops. I'm going to bring the drone down in closer and you can get a good chance to see these. The company is called Grob, G-R-O-B. I think they're a German company, and they are providing milling machines. And we've seen similar milling machines from DMG Mori going into the die shop next to the battery cathode plant. So it's possible that these are as well. And if that's the case, that gives us a little bit of a clue of what the die shop is actually for. And speaking of which, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the die shop coming into view, and of course the battery cathode plant. We'll spend some time on the east side. There's a lot to see here today. The white wrapped tanks or containers have been moved once again. Looks like there's a very large crane getting ready for some serious heavy lifting based on that crane's design. We also see continued work on this east structure. On the bottom left of the screen is some conduit installation. We see more concrete has now been poured over that underground concrete vault. Work is continuing on the slab and the walls, and we see this kind of rounded top steel structure being erected now on the walls. My previous video, I showed you where all those parts were located, and they were starting the assembly of one of these hoops. And it looks like it's going to continue probably at least 20 meters of this particular wall, not more. Now, next to those green porta potties, you see some more of those rounded items. Those are the rest of the parts that are currently on site for that roof section. We also see on this concrete structure the extensions on both the south and the north side, what looks like roads, the work on the walls, forms being placed to pour more concrete into the bowl section. And as I continue to turn, we'll see not only how this looks here, but the extension and how it looks like going to connect to that end of the foundation in the distance. And it all looks like it's going to be one long building or structure. And I've had a couple of ideas from my viewers that think that it's going to be material for raw material drop off and then a clean out for some of the trucks. So we'll continue to monitor to see if that's the case. Here on the far northeast, 2 of those stainless steel tanks still remain waiting for movement, although there is a new yellow crane in this particular location, so maybe they'll be moved soon. On the north end of the building, we see the concrete apron has been poured. They're putting the wrappings on top of it to help with the curing, and this is all part of the receiving area for those 5 receiving doors, and it looks like it's really coming together. On the west side, a lot of different details I want to show you. In addition to the steel corrugated pipe, here it looks like more work to remove this berm, which is widening this section at the expense of the Martin Marietta batch plant. And it's very interesting to see. I think this view here gives you a great idea of just how much wider this is becoming and how much smaller that section for the Martin Marietta plant is becoming. As we fly back over this section, still some water standing, but they continue to try to pump that out and control the water table here. The chiller plant, a lot of activity again. Scaffolding is on the north end, especially on that roof section. Also on the south end where they're continuing to install a lot of the equipment on the roof. We see those 2 stainless steel tanks that match the other 2 at the northeast have been placed. And it just looks like more preparation possibly on the ground, maybe for the other 2 tanks, and then trench work down the middle of this alleyway, plus some other interesting tanks on the right-hand side of the screen. And then here with that red concrete in the trench, this shows that it's electrical conduit, and that concrete is there to remind future workers that there are high electrical wires in that section if they were to do excavation. So that brings to an end a very interesting, a very different day, especially with all of the scary beginning with the police and the possible active attacker, which turned out to be false, and then all the rest of the activity today. I'm just glad that nobody was hurt today, and my heart goes out to all of the people that work here at Giga Texas having to go through that, but at least it came to a good, happy ending. I hope you appreciate the discussion and what we saw in the video today. I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.